A pertinent question I have today, I think everybody should ask themselves is, how is the pandemic affecting kids? OB Keeng to ease no eye, coming out with the music to ease your mind. I feel this question needs to be asked to get a different perspective on what's going on. I grew up in a different age. I guess I grew up in the golden age of the internet. The teachers would always say we're in the internet age, the jet age. But kids now, I think they've passed the internet age. We're in the TikTok age. I guess I've seen the internet grow from its inception to what it is now. Smartphones weren't really a thing until like the last decade, for my country at least. So I was able to adapt, like many other adults like me were able to adapt to the growth of the internet. As the technology was getting better, we too are getting aware of the technology. But I guess being born to this new generation, you are thrust into a world where there is so much information that is available to you at once. This pandemic started late 2019. Since then, all our lives have been affected. So for 2 years, there's been a low-hanging blanket of fear, foreboding for the future. There's been inflation all across the world. There's been a lot of fear-mongering on TV. For these past 2 years, kids have seen what is happening. I'm curious as to how this is affecting them mentally. In my time as a kid, parents would encourage you to go outside, go and play. But these past 2 years, I guess there's been a change in the tide. I don't see parents encouraging their kids to interact much. I mean, it's a pandemic. In this age where the pandemic C-19 is not really affecting kids as much as adults, and yet the restrictions are much more on kids than adults. And the fear of wanting to keep your kids safe, many parents are overcompensating. Schools were closed down. There was this shift to virtual learning. Many of them will have the TV on in one room and be pretending to pay attention to class, at least those in primary school. Secondary school students, they don't get to interact with themselves as much. For 2020, they could only see during the exam periods, and this even extended to the universities. I'm worried that this pandemic might fuel a silent rebellion. I think I'll be right in saying that at some point in every kid's growth, they have an underlying mistrust of adults. Like they are always trying to control us. They don't want us to go out. They feel they know better than us. They feel they are smarter than us. Especially now that there's a lot of information available to kids through the internet that wasn't there before. I've seen some sort of detachment from kids. When the pandemic was just starting out, there wasn't really any outlets for kids to show their fears. There was a very fearful period. Imagine how fearful it was for us as adults. Some of us were thinking the world is coming to an end. We're imagining people dying in the streets. There was a mad rush for groceries. Toilet paper ran out. The day before the initial 2-week lockdown was announced, I went to the supermarket to get supplies. Turned out that I was too late because the place was filled with shoppers. Everyone was wearing a mask, but we were so close together that it really didn't matter. If one person had it, I guess all of us would have had it that day, would have caught it that day. Because everybody was in such a rush that nobody really cared for social distancing. And social distancing was the rage. The supermarket is burnt down now. Burnt down over the holidays. It's crazy. Nobody knows what happened yet. So now, seeing as kids are not really as affected by this pandemic as adults, how are they handling it? I have a cousin that actually caught COVID, and when I spoke to her, she didn't seem like she was bothered about anything. It was like a mild annoyance. I asked her about the vaccine. Have you gotten it? And she just flippantly said, those things don't work. And she's a kid. For her to make that kind of statement, she must have heard it from somewhere, or probably some adults, or she saw some video or tweet or text or TikTok online that told her that. But what I'm more concerned with is the level of detachment that kids had regarding this pandemic. There was a video that was trending about the Chicago mayor some months back, where she was going around Chicago telling people to go in their homes, telling people to go home, to isolate during a lockdown. And there were some kids playing basketball outside with their masks on. And the mayor was like, go home, you're not supposed to be outside. And one of the kids was like, you go home. One of the kids was retaliating, telling the mayor to go home.
You want to take this virus back to your house and get your mama sick? Let's move on.
So, we can have no fun because this.
Hey, all that overdoing, y'all let it defend the truth. You talk about go home, you go home.
This pandemic really brought out the worst in humanity. We saw excessive greed. It turned political at some points. The worst pandemic of our lifetimes. It's a footnote in our history, whether we like it or not. The handling was so bad by adults. There was no unity. It was seen as a way to grab political power. It gave rise to some forms of authoritarianism. It caused divides between people and their families, caused divides between friends. How do you think the kids are taking it? Would the feedback be positive? Because what I've seen is mostly detachment. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you have any experiences with how the kids are taking this pandemic? Do you think it's all going to be over soon, or we're going to see some long-term psychological effects on the part of kids? Did they just shut up their minds and listen to Cardi B? Or is it something affecting them on a very deep level and they are keeping it to themselves? Let me know what you think in the comments. My name is OB Keeng. As always, if you like the video, please like and subscribe. Follow me on my social media channels, and I'll see you guys on the next one.